On March 15th, 3019, the Battle of Pelennor Fields unfolded as a crucial confrontation between the forces of Sauron and the united armies of Gondor and Rohan. This battle marked a significant turning point in the War of the Ring, resulting in a decisive victory for the Free Peoples as they faced the formidable Morgul host. However, despite the heavy losses suffered by Sauron, including the destruction of his most powerful commander, the Witch King, both Denethor and later Gandalf expressed a grim outlook. They believed that without the success of Frodo's perilous mission to destroy the One Ring, the Free Peoples were still doomed. In this video, we will examine the events of the battle, the extent of Sauron's losses, and whether the Dark Lord truly found himself in a precarious position, or if he still had enough power in reserve to continue his relentless pursuit of domination over Middle-earth. Perspectives on the Battle of Pelennor Fields. Whenever someone discusses the Battle of Pelennor Fields, it often sparks a deeper conversation about its significance in the broader context of the War of the Ring. On the one hand, we have figures like Denethor, the steward of Gondor, and Gandalf, the wise and powerful wizard, both of whom express grave concerns about the outcome of the conflict. Their perspectives carry considerable weight, as they have both witnessed the devastating consequences of Sauron's ambition and tyranny. Denethor's words, steeped in despair, reflect his understanding of Sauron's overwhelming power and the ever-looming threat it poses. Despite the Free People's victory at Pelennor, he believes this triumph is but a fleeting moment in a war that seems to be spiraling toward inevitable doom. He states, "For a little space you may triumph on the field for a day, but against the power that now arises, there is no victory." This profound pessimism underscores his belief that Sauron still has vast reserves of strength, ready to be unleashed against Gondor. On the other hand, Gandalf offers a more measured outlook. While he acknowledges the dire situation, he also recognizes the potential for hope. He understands that the Free People's unity and resilience could shift the tide of the conflict. However, he also sees the truth in Denethor's words, knowing that even with their victory at Pelennor, the Free Peoples face an uphill battle. The armies of Sauron are vast, and their defeat does not signal the end of his ambitions. This tension between hope and despair is a critical theme throughout the narrative, highlighting the complexity of their situation. As we delve deeper into what transpired at Pelennor and beyond, it's essential to understand that victories and defeats in war are rarely absolute. The battle's outcome has immediate consequences, but can also lead to a reassessment of the broader strategic landscape. With these perspectives in mind, we can explore the events that unfolded in the weeks surrounding the Battle of Pelennor Fields and how they influenced the war's overall trajectory. Sauron's losses. When we examine the timeline of events from the 10th of March to the 25th of March, the losses incurred by Sauron become strikingly apparent. The Battle of Pelennor Fields was a catastrophic defeat for him, resulting in the loss of nearly the entire Morgul host. This was no small army. It comprised the most formidable soldiers Sauron had at his disposal, including the infamous Haradrim and Easterlings who had pledged their allegiance to him. The Witch King's death at the hands of Éowyn was a severe blow, not only because of his power, but also because he was a symbol of Sauron's might. In the aftermath of the battle, Minas Morgul was left effectively vacant. The loss of the Morgul host represented a significant dent in Sauron's military capabilities. It's important to note that this wasn't just a loss of soldiers, it was a loss of morale and authority. The Morgul host was feared throughout Middle-earth, and its destruction sent ripples of fear and uncertainty through Sauron's remaining forces. Moreover, the battle's toll didn't end with the Morgul host. Alongside it, many of Sauron's other mannish allies faced ruin. The Haradrim, fierce warriors from the south, saw approximately 18,000 of their number decimated, while thousands of Easterlings, Variags, and Trollmen fell in battle. This was an extraordinary loss of life, and one that Sauron could ill afford. As Sauron's forces retreated towards Caer Andros, they faced additional devastation. The blocking army positions intended to keep Rohan at bay were savaged, resulting in thousands more dead orcs and Easterlings. Each lost soldier was not just a number. They represented a potential source of future strength and a portion of Sauron's dwindling resources. Equally critical were the events in southern Gondor, where the Corsair invasion was halted. Aragorn and his Oathbreakers dealt a severe blow to the invading forces, leading to mass panic among the Haradrim. The retreat to Pelargir saw chaos, with many soldiers throwing themselves into the river in a desperate bid to escape. The loss of lives here was staggering, compounding Sauron's losses significantly. The effects of the Corsair defeat. The defeat of the Corsairs at Pelargir marked a pivotal moment in the struggle against Sauron. The Corsair fleet was not merely a naval force, it was a strategic weapon that could threaten the entire coastline of Gondor. Before the battle, Sauron had hoped to use these ships to launch a full-scale assault on Gondor's western shores, potentially overwhelming Gondor's defenses. However, the retreat resulted in an unexpected turn of events. By the end of the battle, Aragorn had commandeered 30 larger ships and numerous smaller vessels, substantially bolstering Gondor's naval power. This newly acquired fleet not only strengthened Gondor's position, but also deprived Sauron of an essential logistical advantage. With the loss of these ships came the loss of thousands of sailors, many of whom were enslaved individuals serving under the Corsairs. Replacing trained sailors is a complex and time-consuming endeavor, unlike replenishing foot soldiers. In the context of the broader war, this loss also had psychological ramifications. The Corsair fleet was a symbol of Sauron's reach and influence over the regions of the south. Its defeat not only diminished Sauron's physical power, but also instilled a sense of hope among the free peoples. The idea that the once unstoppable tide of Sauron's forces could be turned back was a critical morale boost for Gondor and its allies. The chaos that ensued during the retreat also highlighted the fragility of Sauron's forces. Panic among the ranks signified not just the loss of a battle, but also a potential unraveling of loyalty among his allies. Soldiers who witnessed the collapse of their comrades might begin to question their chances of survival under Sauron's command, possibly leading to defections or diminished resolve in future battles. In the immediate aftermath, while Sauron was forced to regroup and reassess his strategy, the free peoples were emboldened. Aragorn, now in possession of a fleet, had options that he didn't have before. He could launch counteroffensives, protect the coasts of Gondor, and potentially assist in other regions under threat. This shift in naval power marked a crucial point in the ongoing conflict, underscoring the complex interplay of victories and losses in a protracted war. The Northern Front. As we shift our focus to the northern theatres of the war, we find that Sauron was not only suffering losses in the south, but also in the north. The timeline reveals a series of devastating defeats for his forces, each of which undermined his overall strategy. On March 11th, one of Sauron's armies was decisively defeated at the Battle of Lothlorien. This encounter was particularly significant as the elves of Lothlorien, under the leadership of Galadriel and Celeborn, showcased their formidable martial prowess and deep understanding of the terrain. They utilized guerrilla tactics, ambushing Sauron's troops and exploiting their familiarity with the forest. Just a day later, on March 12th, the Ents, those ancient shepherds of the forest, struck at another of Sauron's armies in eastern Rohan. The Ents, led by Treebeard, demonstrated that even the most mighty forces could be brought low by the will of nature. The trees themselves became a formidable ally against Sauron's corrupting influence. Their victory was not just a tactical win, it also signified a powerful alliance between the ancient beings of Middle-earth and the free peoples, emphasizing that Sauron's forces could be resisted and defeated. On March 15th, Sauron attempted to launch another army against the woodland realm of Thranduil. However, this effort was similarly thwarted. The elves, adept at warfare and motivated by the looming threat of Sauron, managed to hold their ground. Reports indicate that Sauron suffered heavy casualties, with this defeat adding to the growing list of failures in his campaign. In total, Sauron lost 3 armies in a span of just a few days, which not only diminished his numbers, but also weakened the morale of his remaining troops. As the week progressed, on March 22nd, yet another army was defeated at Lothlorien. By this point, it became apparent that Sauron's military might in the north was rapidly depleting. His ambitious campaigns were faltering, and his strategy seemed increasingly desperate. Although he managed to secure a single victory at the Battle of Dale, where the Easterlings attacked King Brand and besieged Erebor, it was a hollow success. The dwarves and men of Dale and Erebor proved resilient, holding out against the siege. Sauron's northern forces, which had once seemed overwhelming, were now largely spent, reinforcing the perception that his grip on power was weakening. With each defeat, the Free Peoples found renewed strength and resolve, spurring them to rally together against the dark tide of Sauron's ambitions, casualties, and the cost of war. When analyzing the casualties incurred during this tumultuous period, it is crucial to consider the magnitude of Sauron's losses in light of the ongoing conflict. Estimates suggest that Sauron may have lost as many as 200,000 soldiers between the start of the assaults on March 10th and the eventual destruction of the One Ring on March 25th. The losses incurred at Pelennor fields alone are staggering, with the Morgul host suffering catastrophic annihilation, losing more than 50,000 troops. In stark contrast, the casualties suffered by the Free Peoples appear relatively modest. Rohan, despite losing approximately 2,000 men, a third of their fighting force, killed countless enemies in the process. Gondor's losses, while harder to quantify, likely did not exceed 5,000. This discrepancy in casualties not only highlights Sauron's devastating defeats, but also underscores a crucial advantage for the Free Peoples. They had lost fewer soldiers while simultaneously eliminating a substantial portion of Sauron's forces, allowing them to maintain a stronger fighting position. The North also saw considerable engagement, particularly in Mirkwood, where the battle was described as fiery, indicating that while damage was done to the forest, specific numbers regarding losses for Thranduil's forces remain elusive. The elves appeared to have fared better than expected as they went on the offensive against Dol Guldur shortly after Sauron's retreat. Moreover, the dwarves of Erebor and the men of Dale, although initially defeated, managed to regroup and launch counteroffensives. They successfully defended Erebor against the Easterling siege and rallied their forces once news of Sauron's losses reached them. The capability of the Free Peoples to recover quickly from losses and their ability to sustain their fighting forces became a vital aspect of the war. The broader implications of these casualties cannot be understated. Each fallen soldier represents not only a loss of manpower, but also a depletion of morale and resources. Sauron's overwhelming losses were devastating, while the Free People's relative endurance allowed them to regroup and prepare for the next stages of the conflict. In the end, the war was not just a battle of strength, it was a battle of will, and the Free Peoples demonstrated an impressive resolve in the face of overwhelming odds. Sauron's remaining forces. Despite the staggering losses suffered by Sauron, it is essential to understand that he was not entirely without resources. The destruction of the Morgul host and the Corsair fleet represented significant setbacks, but Sauron still retained a considerable number of forces in reserve. Throughout the war, it became clear that while the immediate losses were significant, they were not crippling to Sauron's overall military capabilities. Gandalf's comments about emptying Mordor underscore this reality. As the forces of the West marched toward the Black Gate, they encountered an army that outnumbered them more than 10 to 1. This indicated that Sauron had not exhausted his reserves. Instead, he had opted to keep substantial forces in reserve, likely awaiting the right moment to unleash them. Furthermore, Sauron had allies from the east and south, men who had been rallied to his cause. As Denethor observed, all the east is moving, a testament to the continual recruitment and mobilization of Sauron's forces. While the Morgul host and corsairs were significant losses, they were but parts of a much larger machine. Sauron's strategy involved not only brute force, but also the manipulation of alliances and subjugation of lesser nations. In fact, many of Sauron's soldiers came from regions like Harad and Rhûn, territories rich in manpower. Despite the setbacks in the north and south, Sauron's ability to replace his losses through these regions remained a threat to the Free Peoples. The complexity of Sauron's power lay not only in the number of soldiers, but also in his capacity to rally support from various factions across Middle-earth. As the battle unfolded, Sauron's forces from these distant lands were mobilized to reinforce his army. This meant that even as the Free Peoples celebrated their victories, they were also aware that the war was far from over. The loss of one battle did not equate to the loss of the war. Sauron still had numerous soldiers who could be called to arms, ready to join the fight when the opportunity arose. In summary, while the Free Peoples enjoyed significant victories during this period, they needed to remain vigilant. Sauron's remaining forces, bolstered by reinforcements from his eastern and southern subjects, continued to represent a formidable threat. The battle for Middle-earth was shifting, but it was still in play. The strategic importance of Mordor. The strategic significance of Mordor cannot be overstated. Geographically, it was an imposing fortress, surrounded by mountains on three sides, making it inherently defensible. The mountain ranges provided a natural barrier against invasion, allowing Sauron to consolidate his forces and fortify his position. The two major passes into Mordor were heavily guarded, ensuring that any attempt by the Free Peoples to penetrate his stronghold would be met with fierce resistance. Even with the considerable losses Sauron had faced, his control over Mordor allowed him to maintain a foothold in the war. The inhospitable terrain posed significant challenges for any invading army. The twisted, dark lands of Mordor, with their volcanic landscape and treacherous paths, were not only difficult to navigate, but also served as a formidable ally for Sauron. The Free Peoples would face countless obstacles, including the infamous Mount Doom and the barren lands of Gorgoroth. Moreover, Sauron's ability to utilize the resources within Mordor provided him with a continuous supply of troops and materials. Even if his forces on the front lines were depleted, he could easily train new recruits, manufacture weapons, and create armor within the fortress. The notion that Sauron could simply call upon his remaining forces in Mordor to bolster his ranks was a daunting reality for the Free Peoples. The difficulty of breaching Mordor became evident when one considers the history of previous sieges. The last significant assault on Barad-dûr took place during the War of the Last Alliance, which took 7 years to culminate in a victory. This historical context served as a grim reminder of the challenges that lay ahead for any coalition seeking to dismantle Sauron's power. In essence, the Free Peoples had to acknowledge that while they may have achieved momentary victories, the ultimate goal of defeating Sauron lay in overcoming the fortress that was Mordor. The geographical and strategic advantages it provided him meant that any prolonged conflict could lead to a war of attrition that would favor Sauron. As the various armies of the Free Peoples contemplated their next steps, it became clear that they needed not just courage and strength, but also a well-thought-out strategy to counter Sauron's enduring power. The tides of battle. As we delve deeper into the ongoing conflict, the tides of battle began to shift in unexpected ways. The strategies employed by both sides, while grounded in their historical contexts, evolved with each skirmish. On the front lines, the Free Peoples were not only battling against the physical might of Sauron's armies, but also contending with a psychological war that sought to break their spirit. Initially, the Free Peoples, composed of men, elves, and dwarves, found themselves united by a common cause. The hope sparked by their recent victories against Sauron's forces created a sense of optimism. They believed that, with their combined strengths, they could finally break Sauron's grip on Middle-earth. The victories at Lothlorien and against the Ents solidified their resolve, drawing warriors from all corners of Middle-earth to rally against the encroaching darkness. However, Sauron, ever cunning and ruthless, was not without his own tactics. He understood that morale was a critical aspect of warfare. As reports of the Free People's victories spread, he sought to undermine their resolve through targeted psychological warfare. He dispatched shadowy emissaries to sow discord among the ranks of the Allied forces, whispering doubts and spreading fear. Tales of horrific losses were exaggerated to create a sense of impending doom. One particularly harrowing incident involved a group of scouts who were ambushed near the borders of Rohan. They had been sent to gather intelligence on Sauron's movements, but stumbled upon a gruesome scene: decimated bodies of Rohan's soldiers left to rot, a chilling message from Sauron meant to instill fear. The survivors returned to their encampments, their faces pale and shaken. News of this brutal ambush spread quickly, causing ripples of anxiety among the Allied forces. The Free Peoples recognized that the war was becoming more than just a physical struggle. It was a test of their collective will. Leaders such as Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli took it upon themselves to bolster morale among their ranks. They organized grand assemblies where tales of heroism were recounted, and songs were sung to remind the warriors of their shared purpose. Aragorn's impassioned speeches became a rallying cry, emphasizing unity and the importance of standing together against the growing darkness. As the days turned into weeks, the battles raged on, with neither side willing to relent. Sauron's forces, though depleted, were relentless. They mounted attacks under the cover of darkness, using the terrain of Mordor to their advantage. The Orc armies launched surprise raids on supply lines, hoping to starve the Free Peoples into submission. But each skirmish also revealed the tenacity and adaptability of the Allied forces. They learned to anticipate Sauron's maneuvers, adapting their strategies to counter his ever-evolving tactics. This interplay of tactics and counter-tactics, psychological warfare, and sheer will created a complex battlefield dynamic. The Free Peoples realized that they had to not only fight, but also outthink their enemy. This recognition of the multidimensional nature of war would serve them well in the days to come, as they prepared for the next major confrontation. The Gathering Storm. Amid the ongoing battles, a gathering storm loomed over Middle-earth, one that would change the course of the war. On the horizon, the remnants of Sauron's forces began to consolidate, rallying under a single banner once more. In the wake of their initial defeats, Sauron's commanders initiated a strategic regrouping. They sought to rally the remnants of their armies and reinforce them with new recruits from the east and south. In the shadowy halls of Barad-dûr, Sauron convened a council of war, where his most trusted lieutenants discussed their next moves. The air crackled with tension as reports from various fronts were presented. Sauron, his presence imposing and dark, listened intently, his mind working through the complexities of war. Despite the setbacks, he remained confident that victory was within his grasp. The remnants of the Morgul host and the harried Easterlings were bolstered by mercenaries from Harad and Rhûn. Sauron dispatched emissaries to rally these factions, promising them wealth and power in exchange for their loyalty. His manipulative words played upon their ambitions, igniting a fervor that drew them into the conflict. With each new alliance, Sauron's forces began to swell, gaining the numbers they so desperately needed. As the news of Sauron's regrouping reached the Free Peoples, alarm bells rang. The leaders convened at a council in Rivendell, where representatives from each race came together to discuss the impending threat. Elrond, wise and perceptive, emphasized the urgency of the situation. "If we do not act swiftly, we risk allowing Sauron to regain the initiative," he warned. The council's discussions turned heated as they debated the best course of action. Some advocated for a preemptive strike against Mordor, believing that they could catch Sauron off guard. Others argued for a more cautious approach, suggesting that they bolster their defenses and prepare for the inevitable clash that lay ahead. Ultimately, Aragorn emerged as a voice of reason, advocating for unity among the free peoples. "We must not allow fear to dictate our actions," he urged. "If we stand together, we can face whatever Sauron throws at us, but we must also prepare for the worst." His words resonated, and the leaders agreed to send scouts to gather intelligence on Sauron's movements while simultaneously fortifying their own positions. As the council concluded, the leaders left with a renewed sense of purpose. They recognized that the coming storm was not just a test of strength, but a trial of their resolve and unity. The next few weeks would be crucial, as both sides prepared for the inevitable confrontation that loomed on the horizon. The calm before the storm. The days that followed the council meeting were marked by an uneasy calm, a deceptive peace that belied the chaos soon to erupt. The Free Peoples took advantage of this brief respite to strengthen their alliances and prepare for the impending conflict. Training exercises were held throughout their encampments, with warriors from different races working side by side. The camaraderie that developed during these drills served to bolster morale, reinforcing the idea that they were united in their cause. In the forests of Lothlorien, the elves practiced their archery skills, their arrows singing through the air as they honed their aim. Legolas, ever the master marksman, led many of these exercises, teaching the younger elves the importance of precision and patience. The graceful movements of the elves, combined with their ethereal beauty, provided a stark contrast to the grim realities of war. Meanwhile, in Rohan, the Rohirrim prepared their horses for battle. Éomer and his fellow riders worked tirelessly, ensuring that their mounts were fit and ready for the fast-paced skirmishes that would likely characterize the next phase of the war. The bond between horse and rider grew ever stronger as they trained together in the rolling fields of Rohan. The proud riders of Rohan were determined to prove their mettle once more. In Gondor, the soldiers worked tirelessly to fortify the defenses of Minas Tirith. Construction crews labored day and night, reinforcing the walls and preparing for any potential sieges. Denethor, ever the pragmatist, oversaw these efforts, ensuring that every stone was placed with care. The looming threat of Sauron's forces hung heavily in the air, yet Denethor also found ways to inspire his people, recounting tales of past victories and the indomitable spirit of Gondor. Despite the apparent preparations, a sense of foreboding lingered over the Free Peoples. Many warriors sensed the impending clash and the uncertainty it brought. Rumors circulated among the camps, tales of Sauron's machinations and the whispers of dark magic that fueled his forces. Fear began to creep into the hearts of some, and leaders like Aragorn and Gandalf worked tirelessly to quell these fears, reminding their troops of their cause and the strength they possessed when united. As time passed, the atmosphere grew charged, each day feeling heavier than the last. The air was thick with tension as the Free Peoples awaited the inevitable storm. Their scouts reported increased activity within Mordor, confirming that Sauron was indeed amassing forces, readying for the confrontation. Days turned into a week, and still, the calm persisted. Each dawn brought with it a sense of urgency, yet the expected clash remained just beyond the horizon. The quiet before the storm hung like a dark cloud, a reminder that the peace they had worked so hard to maintain was tenuous at best. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed this exploration, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like to support the channel. See you on our next adventure.